So we're starting off with migration and marketplace. We've taken a marketplace asset that was free for the month. It's just caves, and I know that I want to have the whole cave. This whole layout is great for me for teaching. I'm already ready to go, so I'm going to go to asset actions, migrate, and everything's there, right? It finds dependencies, it finds the hierarchy, and it says, oh well, this thing needs that blueprint, and it needs that texture, and it needs that particle system, and then everything's checked. If I don't want to bring something over, I have an opportunity here to uncheck it and not bring it over. I say okay. The other gotcha is that it's looking for the content folder. So when I find this project, I need to find the content folder. You don't want to find a subfolder because then things won't match up. It needs to create the same hierarchy. So find the content folder, select it, and then now it'll send over, and it is copying over off the hard drive, but it's putting it in the right order and everything's connected, right? Let it do that thing. So there's 203 things. It said something failed. Let's show the message log. It said because it wasn't saved. Let's save it and then migrate it again. And I can migrate the whole thing again. I can just say don't override. Everything should be working. I think everything's fine. We'll leave it up for a second. Are you responsive? Well, just assume it works. So I'm impatient. Let's crash it. Untask. Cool. So let's start working with stuff in here, or at least make sure it loaded, and then we'll take a quick detour. So let's maybe I should have auditioned a little bit more before I migrated over. I've already kind of done that, but we can take a look at all levels. Right, so it didn't migrate over. Uh, let's try it one more time. And it is called Showcase Map, Asset Actions, Migrate, all of it, Content Folder, and say, would you like to override it? I could say yes. Just give me all fresh stuff. Or I could say no, and it would only bring over the couple things I didn't have already. All right, before I close it, let's do a sanity check. Mm, It's not showing it for some reason, so I'm not gonna worry about it. I'm taking everything from the map, so I can debug this later on, or we can write to the people who made it, or see if there's any comments about it. But in general, I'm just gonna put the whole thing in the project for today. Yes, it's fairly new. Wow, wow, right there. Sometimes there'll be questions. See, like, why is it modular? The whole idea is that it's modular. Like that it seems like a weird qualification. Anyway, it seems to be done. We come back over to our project. Hey, cool. So things you might want to sure working with a map is that it's not, well, it is in the Unreal Engine, so it works in real time, but maybe it's not works. It doesn't work for VR. It doesn't work for something you need. So you can always do some profiling, find out what the frame rate is, right? So I'm getting 30 frames per second. I can try to override that. As I know from my documentation for my VR, I can go into my rendering settings, um, and and try to do fixed frame rate. I can say, can I make it at 60? When I hit enter, does it make it? It's still doing 30, but that's fine for what we need for today. Other things we can try to optimize or just identify. It says that the map needs to be built, whatever. Everything seems fine. We can fix it later on. But just make sure that it works and that you can navigate and that's useful before you go with it. And cool. So I want to bring in one thing real quick. Actually, I'm not even going to worry about it. We'll do that later on. So we're going to stick with this world. And we're going to make our first material. My things are underneath assets. I make a new folder for materials, and then under sorry, I made a material. That was silly. Make a folder for materials, and then inside of here, I will make the main material. So style guide says materials of m underscore main. Or you can call it, you might have a few mains as you try to get better at this. You can call this one just like base color main, something like that. Inside of it, we have first material and we have first our color right here. I hold down 3 and click, and that gives me a 3 constant. Click here. And then if I change the color, you might notice that it takes a second and it says okay. Right? If I do something else, it takes a second to render or to get applied. And this stuff, the more and more complicated they get, the longer it takes to do these things. Master materials or main materials are not optimized for real time. They're just where you're supposed to be doing all your editing. It's the instances, the children of these that are supposed to be running in real time. So from here, I can right click and say create an instance, and then this one could be mi, uh, and then I have an instance of it. So material instance mi red, right? Right now I don't see anything here at all to use, but I do see that I have a reference to the parent. If I take this and give it a name that I can then call from, so it's a parameter name, and I call it color, and then save, we'll notice that then I have an option here for color. If I go to, let's just say, a simple map like this one, so we can play things quicker, I can bring in a basic shape cube, and then I can add here this instance. And what's great about now that we've allocated resources again at the very first week, I said game engines are lazy. We want to make sure that we're telling it not to be lazy. Don't be lazy about how quickly we're moving these colors. So now it's doing it real time. We've allocated resources for it, right? Some things that might be interesting also to address would be the ability to make it glow. Right, so that's a emissive color. I want to make it get brighter, but I also want to make the color that it is be brighter. So we're going to do our first little shader math. We're going to multiply the color by a value. This is not ready to be, I need to give a name to this so it can be driven in real time. So let's go ahead and um, promote to a parameter. The parameter is just called B by default because that's what it was called, but I can call this glow amount or something. I'll put this into glow. By default, if I save, oh, interesting. I thought it would be Because we're also in base color. Let's try this one. So by default, 0 is no color whatsoever. So if you're just using emissive, you want to make sure that you're 1. But if you put in a base color, it'll already have a base color. Let's see. Other properties, I could say that it's lit, so it's taking colors and shadows that has a base color. There you go. And now I have a glow amount, and I can bring that down, right? So now I have it adjusted in real time. Cool. So, how do we adjust this? Some people were getting into dynamic material instances and blueprints. For lack of time, we're going to bypass that and just show you how to do this in sequencer. So, we're going to add in a for sequencer. This is a cinematic button right here, and this is a timeline. It's very much modeled after the After Effects timeline in the form and function, or should be, if I could actually. Let's see. Everything's running fine. Easy things are easy and hard things are hard. Let's see. And test. Let's open it one more time. And I'm about to do that stuff again. That's fine. Helps drill home the story. So we're going to go to maps, see what we have here. So we don't have that cube. Do we have the materials? We have the materials. So we have red is not red. Red should be red, right? And then if we want one that's blue, we make another instance off of here. Call that one mi blue or mi yellow, right? And then turn that to what it needs to be. Cool. So now we understand the idea of instances and why we use them because they're more performant. Um, but we might want to make things change in on a sequencer. Let's put in a basic asset shape cube. All right. So this one's red. This one's yellow. It, right now they're glowing just because it's a darkly lit environment, but we can bring that down in real time. Cool. So we're going to add a sequencer again. Let's see if we get a little further this time. So add a level sequencer, give it a name. I'm going to put in assets. I can make a folder for sequencers. And then in here, we can call this one world one. And then there's a little icon for a sequencer. It doesn't really matter where it is, but you do want to be able to select it sometimes so you can come down and find the properties. Um, if you're using marketplace assets, your world can get really, really big. And it's hard to find things. I like to make folders and name them like with numbers in the top. So it's like 00 sequencers so that you can find it always at the very, very top. And the most important features are be able to open it and close it. And then does it autoplay or does it not autoplay? We want to do stuff with these guys. So let's go ahead and take our cube and we can either drag it in or add it in from here, add an actor. And then now there is the transform. That makes sense. The transform we want to change maybe is the scale. right? So now we have keyframes. We want to start there, end there. I like to be able to drag to the end of a timeline and make it stay within the bounds, right? So green is the beginning, red is the end. Let's go to play properties and say keep playhead and playback range while scrubbing. So now I get back to 0, get to the end. And I want to also end at here, but somewhere in the middle, I want to be up there. I can add a keyframe, or I could turn on auto keyframe, and as I move things around, it just adds the keyframe when I get done. Well, it should have done that. Let's see. There it goes. So now just when I move things around, it adds keyframe. Anyone who does animation, uh, I was keyframing it on scale. That's funny. Anyone does animation, it's up to you if you want to do auto keyframe or not. It's a preferred workflow. It can introduce new mistakes. Right, it's going up and down and then over. All right, so now we're animating things. And to watch it back, I hit play and nothing happens. Let's get rid of our mode and just do game mode. So now I'll just be playing where I hit play. Where's my player start? Boom. Let's get rid of it. There you go. So now I'm watching it, but I don't see it moving at all. That's because the sequencer isn't playing. I can change that by saying autoplay, and then whether or not I want it to loop indefinitely, loop exactly so many times, and then what is the play rate. So you can make it really slow or something like that. Now if I hit play, it animates. It's 150 frames at 30 frames per second. So this takes how many seconds is that? 5 seconds, right? So I'm making a 5 second animation. Um, we already had transform here by default. That is scale, rotation, position. Do whatever you want. But there's some other properties we could take a look at. We can attach things, right? So halfway through, I could be rotating another object and it can attach itself to there. And that's like the same thing as parenting, the hierarchy. And then you can detach things. I can attach audio. I can make events. We're going to do events next week where we can trigger like explosions and stuff. We're going to do it this week. Um, some other things you can do that are kind of hidden and not well documented is get into these materials. So I want to change something on my static mesh, right? So the thing in my details, what in my static mesh do I want to animate? I want to animate element 0, which is my material. And what my element 0 do I want to animate? Well, I have a thing called color and I have a thing called glow amount, right? So I have here all those different assets I can change, right? So in this material, it's yellow by default, and then maybe we want it to be yellow at the very end, but maybe somewhere in the middle, I want it to be a different color. I wonder if I could do it this way. No, that's tint. I don't want tinted. Undo. I was interested in what that would be. So um, I'm gonna have basically an RG and a B here. Maybe not the most intuitive way of doing things. Doo-doo-doo. I can start changing stuff. That's alpha. I don't want to change that. All right, so now I'm animating colors. Properties, tangent, this is the key. Um, and then if you've done keyframe animation, you know there's always curves that things animate on. Um, by default, everything is in a spline, right? It's eases in and eases out. If I have two screens, sometimes I like to give a dedicated screen to just my curve editor. Sometimes you don't want things to be that way. Sometimes you want things to start more linearly. right? Then you can choose these different curve types and say, I want it to actually do linear interpolation. So go directly there, come directly back. I can scrub and see that it goes there. Cool. Um, Maybe I don't want it to play immediately. Maybe I want to be able to think about stuff before I play. So I'm going to come back to sequencer, not autoplay. Keep it selected. And then I'm going to do a key press. So we know we type in things and it gives us contextual clues and whatever. It's funny because I was working with a guy and I was like, let's do on spacebar, let's hit play. Right. So I was like, we need to do spacebar. So he goes, I don't see spacebar. It's like you have to type in the word spacebar. Sorry, it's one of those moments where you're like really tired. It's like you can't just type in spacebar. You have to actually write the word spacebar. Um, right click. We have a reference to World 01, the sequencer, because it's selected here. That means context sensitive. We have a reference to it. And what do we want to do with this thing? We want to play it, right? So let's type in the word play. There it is. Play. It is what we want it to do. The spacebar plays. Let's make it loop indefinitely. And then maybe we want it to be on, we want to use a flow control node called flip flop and say the first time I hit it, play. The second time I hit it, why don't you pause? All right. It's always good to, be on a ride, be like, stop the ride, I want to get off. Um, but hitting, a lot of people I see say, oh, I'm hitting play down here and space bar's not working. You're just previewing the sequence. You're not actually hitting, you have to hit play in the actual viewport. So sometimes it might be smarter just to like close it, just so it's not even confusing you. Hit play. There's our things. Spacebar makes it go. I'm clicked into the viewport. My mouse isn't over the details. I actually have to be clicked in here for a key press to work. And so now it's doing its thing, infinitely looping, right? Pause, play, pause, play, pause, play, pause, play, pause. If I'm not sure if it's working, I can always come over here, debug it, and make sure that that is working. All right, so click back in here, play, pause, play, pause, play, pause, play, pause, play, pause, right? Cool. So, with the amount of time we have left, obviously you see I'm doing this in a very small level with small things, materials, lights, all these different properties can be kind of changed. Let's do some cameras. One of the great features here is that we can get our nice little angle we like, frame it up. Like this is where I want a camera. If I drag a camera in and it's not there, but in this little top left 3 lines, we say create camera here. We actually have one. Now if I back away, boom, there's a little camera. And go over here. I want to look at this thing. Let's put a camera there. And then we're going to go check out these suckers over here as they're rolling around. And we can create a camera here. I want to get my sequencer back open. Well, I know I put it at the very top. Maybe I want to find my cameras later on. I can also right click on these suckers, say move to, and move them up top, right? So now everything I want to play around with is at the very top, easy for me to find. Personally, for me, it's organizationally nice. Let's open our sequencer back up. Open it. And then now we need to add these cameras to here. Just drag them in. And automatically it creates this thing called a camera cuts. If it doesn't create a camera cuts, we can always make one, which is right. Well, it's already been made. Oh yeah, so it's grayed out because it's already been made. And when we're ready to play, we lock in. But the problem is that we don't know which camera to use. We have to use this to splice between our different ones. I'm going to change my show time as seconds. I'm going to add in snapping to maybe frames. No, let's see. Snap to, well, definitely keys. Let's do keys, snapping section. Well, you can get better at making it so it just snaps the whole numbers or whatever. You can also type in where the playhead is. At 2 seconds, I want to change from camera 0 to camera 1. Or maybe I want to change the beginning to camera 1. Then we can watch that. Then over here at 4 seconds in, it did snap to camera 2. If things are getting confusing, you can always delete these things. And just make sure, right now what I'm doing is I'm piloting this. If you come down to here, you're actually in interactive zone. You're flying around this camera, right? And then if I eject it, it's where I left it right there. So be careful. And the same thing as doing this. Be careful when you're piloting because you are moving it around. We're not going to worry about animating cameras just yet. So we're starting off here at 2 seconds in. We're going to add in the next one. And then at 4 seconds in, we're going to add in this camera 0. Cool. I can't see that because I'm not looking at my camera cuts. Now I can see it. So now I've created my 5 second story that when I close sequencer, save all, and hit play, I could say spacebar. We start here. After 2 seconds, it moves over there. After 2 seconds, it moves over there. And it keeps on doing it every 5 seconds. All right, I can pause it. Play, pause, play, pause, play, pause, play, pause. Right? So now we have control of these tracks. So create some vignettes, do something more elaborate than what I'm doing, but you can see you can trigger things with this stuff. If you're wanting to get into triggering particles, I say it gets a little bit more complicated. Um, it's better to put things in blueprints. So find a blueprint, open your sequencer, add in a blueprint. Don't just make it in your outliner. And then on a blueprint, you can say add an event track. And then when you keyframe, you say put it, find an event in here. This is something I'm throwing at the last second, but I can make a custom event here. I just know people are going to do it. I can call it do this. And then when I say this event should drag, quick bind it to do this. And so now it's connected. This is what's called director blueprint. Just ignore it. And so now I've connected this. So when I drag through here, it's now connected to BP light, and this custom event will trigger. That's just if you want to do particles. It's easier to do them when they're in blueprints. Everything else, just try to mess around with just static meshes and materials and see how far you get with that, and do some cameras. And we'll get to animating cameras soon. Cool. Much simpler. Have fun.